So, I've got the Korean War, an old Victory Games game set up. Uh, this is, to me, this has been a real favorite of mine in terms of how the game plays out, some of the mechanics, the decision making, the level at which it's taken. I do have a question of whether it's at all balanced. Tito kind of led me to set this up because I have the same feeling about it, which is, and maybe Awful Green Things is the third game of this nature. I feel like there's a trick to surviving the game as the UN player. Almost every time, the first time I played Solitaire, and it's been about a decade since I've played it, the UN loses, maybe not Busan itself, but if they lose every other city, or I think all but two of the cities, I have to look and pay attention because it's really actually very easy to do, they lose the game. And that usually happens on the first, I think it's the first, right around the third turn, I think, is where the failure happens. The main problem is we've got these really weak Republic of Korea units everywhere. They're just regiments. They're way, way under strength when compared to, say, the North Korean divisions that they're facing. The North Korean divisions also have armor. The initial U.S. units that are thrown into the conflict from the Far East Command are really, really inadequate for the task. The U.S. was not prepared for war, and they sent troops who had low morale and poor equipment into a hot engagement with veteran Korean troops, veterans of the Chinese Civil War. What's really cool about the game, right from the very beginning, the U.S. has to decide what their response is in terms of commitment level. And they pick this through a number of different things, the rules of engagement, mainly air rules, the intervention track, how many troops they're going to throw in, and that's the mobilization level, I think. Anyway, they make a choice based on all of these, which determines how many troops they get. These are various different reinforcement groups that they'll get depending on what they pick, and what they can do with their air units in terms of interdictions and close air support. Interdictions being the biggest thing, which is the rules of engagement at the most limited level just allow them to attack the roads in South Korea. But in North Korea, they can go forward, and finally the very highest level allows them to bomb right next to Russia. Of course, the northern area of North Korea is adjacent to China, which makes all those provinces more questionable in terms of actually intervening. The conflict itself is this wonderful spanning seesaw event where the North Koreans come charging down, make it almost all the way down to Busan, get pushed back. Well, they're being frozen in the perimeter historically. There's the Incheon landing, which cuts off their supply and pretty much destroys everything south of there. MacArthur ordering troops forward, and really almost the entirety of the north is conquered. And then the Chinese come down in some great wave, smashing the UN back past Seoul. And then a UN counterattack pushing back forward. So there's this really nice feel to the game in terms of changing momentums. Largely it's done with sort of special supply rules and maybe special modifiers to the combat during the periods of communist offensives especially. The communists have a lot of trouble remaining in supply, even as far as Seoul, with the regular rules in play. So as soon as the regular rules come back in play, things change a lot, and it becomes much harder for them to maintain an offensive. The UN player has to avoid a few things. Among others, they have to avoid World War III. Why that's their job? Well, that's to make the game plausible, the decisions that were made plausible in game terms. You can't make the MacArthur suggestion and win this game. Because the effects of it are outside the scope of the game by so much. You know, if you start bombing Manchuria and trying to conquer all of North Korea, we don't know what would have happened. World War III is not a bad option in terms of guesses. And the U.S. government definitely, and the UN, especially the other UN countries, were very opposed to the idea of fighting the war to a full conclusion. And China was not happy with it either. There's no question there that once the front stabilized, China wanted peace as well. Anyway, this should be a lot of fun. I'll come back as soon as I've made key decisions with the reinforcements. I'm not as familiar with the rules on these that I am. And maybe talk a little bit about the terrain, and because this mountainous terrain. So there's one road, and you need it, especially in the very south. But then there's like two pathways, one along the mountainside and one up above. I got to get out because I'm really out of time.